You should be grateful I married you.
He didn't even lower his voice when he said it. You should be grateful I married you. The words landed soft and almost lazy, like he was bored of humiliating her, but too used to it to stop. Everyone at the table heard him anyway. Crystal glasses paused midair, silk sleeves stilled. A few of his friends exchanged looks that tried and failed to hide their smiles. She kept her eyes on the white linen, tracing a stain that wasn't there. Don't cry. If you cry, he wins. Her fingers curled tighter in her lap, nails biting into skin she'd trained not to feel. Grateful. She tasted the word like something spoiled. I took you out of nothing, he continued, leaning back in his chair, expensive watch flashing under the chandelier. Out of the mud. Out of that struggle you call a life. Her chest burned. Not because he was loud, because he was calm, because this wasn't anger, this was certainty. You promised you'd never speak to me like this again, she thought, but her mouth stayed closed. Silence had become her second language. Across the table, his mother cleared her throat, lips pursed tight in that polite Korean way that said, "This is shameful, but not shameful enough to stop." Tradition mattered more than discomfort, appearances more than truth. Her husband, no, she corrected herself, the man she married, smiled at the guests like he'd just made a joke, like she was a prop in his story. Someone laughed, another looked away. Her heart whispered, you loved him. Remember that. You loved him when he had nothing but ambition and bad suits and dreams that shook when he spoke. She remembered nights in their first apartment, walls thin, heat broken, his accent thicker back then. The way he used to say her name like it was a promise. The way he once told her, when I win, we win. Now he was winning, and she was losing air. She pushed back her chair softly, the legs barely making a sound against the marble floor. She stood before he could stop her. I'm going to get some air, she said quietly. He didn't look at her, just waved a hand like he was dismissing a server. Don't be dramatic. The words followed her as she walked away, spine straight, heels steady, heart screaming. Don't be dramatic, she repeated inside her head, the way someone repeats a curse to see if it loses power. The balcony doors slid shut behind her, muting the laughter, the music, the life of a room she no longer belonged to. Cool night air kissed her face, soul glittering below like it didn't know she was breaking apart above it. She gripped the railing, breathed in, breathed out. You chose this, she told herself. You chose love over safety, over truth. Her phone vibrated in her clutch. One message, unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost, but something in her chest tightened, old and instinctive, like a scar remembering the knife. The message was short. Are you ready now? Her throat closed. She typed back before she could think. Ready for what? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Her pulse quickened. The city below blurred. The reply came. To stop pretending you were small. Her fingers trembled. She stared at the screen, heart hammering so loud she was sure someone inside could hear it. Heat rushed up her neck. Not fear exactly, recognition. No, not now, not here. Another message followed before she could respond. He doesn't know. Does he? Her stomach dropped. She turned, instinctively glancing back through the glass doors at the man laughing inside, arm draped over his chair like a king surveying what he owned. If he knew, he would already be kneeling, a quiet, dangerous voice inside her said. She locked her phone and pressed it to her chest. I can't, she whispered aloud, voice cracking. Not yet. Because once the door opened, it wouldn't close again. Once she stopped pretending, people would bleed, emotionally, financially, maybe worse. Once she became who she really was, the woman he married would disappear forever. And part of her, weak, foolish, still romantic, was mourning that woman already. She went back inside. The room smelled like money and control. Her husband finally looked at her then, irritation flashing across his face. What took you so long? She smiled, a small one, careful, the kind she'd learned to wear like armor. Sorry, she said. I got distracted. He smirked. By what? The view? By the truth, she thought. By the sound of my old life knocking. She sat back down, folded herself neatly into the space he allowed her. Her silence pleased him. She could tell by the way his shoulders relaxed. That's when his phone rang. He frowned, glanced at the screen, and stood abruptly. I need to take this. As he walked away, his mother leaned in close, voice low and sharp. You should know your place, the woman murmured in Korean. A man like my son does not owe you gentleness. The words sliced clean, familiar, almost comforting in their cruelty. She nodded. Yes, ma'am. But inside, something ancient shifted. I know my place, she thought. I just stopped living in it. If you're new here, welcome to Afro-Korean Stories TV. This is where love gets dangerous, power hides behind romance, and the truth never stays buried for long. If you feel that ache in your chest already, you're in the right place. Subscribe. Stay with us. He came back 10 minutes later, face tight, smile gone. We're leaving, he said. She blinked. Leaving? Now. The room felt colder, chairs scraped, eyes followed them. She stood automatically, purse clutched to her side. As they walked toward the exit, she felt it again, that pull in her chest. Her phone buzzed once more. She didn't look. She didn't need to. She already knew what it would say. Outside, the night swallowed them whole. Valets moved like shadows, engines purred. He stopped suddenly, turned to her, eyes sharp with something she hadn't seen before. You embarrassed me tonight, he said. Don't do it again. Her heart didn't race this time. It slowed. She met his gaze. I didn't say anything, she replied softly. That's the problem, he snapped. People might start thinking you matter. There it was, the truth, naked and unafraid. She smiled again, but this time it reached her eyes. Oh, she thought, calm settling over her like silk. They're going to know. She opened the car door and slid inside, back straight, hands steady. Her phone vibrated once, twice. She finally looked. We're close. Just say the word. She typed one sentence. Not yet, but soon. The car pulled away, disappearing into the city. Above them, unseen, plans were already moving. Names were being spoken in rooms she'd never stepped into. Doors she'd kept locked were creaking open. And the man beside her had no idea that the woman he was trying to erase was about to become the most dangerous presence in his world. The car smelled like leather and his cologne, something expensive, sharp, chosen to announce authority before he ever spoke. She sat perfectly still beside him, hands folded, knees together, the obedient wife he expected. Street lights slid across the window and over his face, catching the tight line of his jaw, the irritation he hadn't bothered to soften. You embarrassed me, he said again, as if repetition could carve the words deeper. You know how important tonight was. He watched the city blur past. Neon signs in Hangul and English. Cafes still open. Couples laughing. Lives continuing. I didn't mean to. The lie came easily. That scared her more than the truth. He scoffed. Meaning doesn't matter. Perception does. He loosened his tie, exhaled like he was the only one suffocating. People already think I'm married down. You standing there with that face, like you were about to cry, it doesn't help? Her chest tightened. People already think, the sentence echoed. She wondered when his voice had replaced her own inside her head. I'll do better, she said, because that was the right answer, because survival sometimes looked like agreement. He nodded, satisfied, and turned up the radio. Korean ballads filled the car, something about longing and regret. She almost laughed at the irony. Her phone vibrated again in her purse. She didn't move. Ignore it, she told herself. Just get home. Just survive tonight. But the vibration came again. Longer this time. Insistent. He glanced over. Who's that? No one, she said too quickly. He reached out, palm open. Let me see. Her heart slammed. A dangerous instinct rose in her throat. Protect, hide, run. She forced herself to stay calm, slowly pulling the phone out and placing it in his hand like an offering. He scrolled, his brow furrowed. Unknown number. 2 short messages. We're close. Just say the word. He laughed, actually laughed, tossing the phone back into her lap. Spam. Even scammers can smell desperation. The word hit her harder than his insults earlier. Desperation. As if she were some stray thing begging to be chosen. She smiled faintly and slipped the phone back into her purse, fingers brushing the smooth leather inside. There was something else there. An envelope, thin, unassuming, heavy with consequences. She hadn't planned to bring it tonight, hadn't even known she would need it, but her body had moved on instinct when she left the apartment earlier, sliding it into her bag like a secret talisman. The car slowed as they entered their building's underground garage. The lights flickered overhead, concrete walls closing in. He parked, cut the engine. Tomorrow, he said, unbuckling. My parents are coming for dinner. Wear something appropriate, and try not to look so tired. She nodded. Yes. They rode the elevator up in silence, the hum of cables, the soft chime of passing floors. She studied their reflections in the mirrored walls, him tall, polished, untouchable, her smaller, darker, deliberately muted, a wife shaped to fit a narrative she hadn't written. When the doors opened, she stepped out first. Their apartment was immaculate, cold, minimalist lines, neutral tones, success without warmth. He loosened his cuffs. I'm going to shower. Don't wait up. She watched him disappear down the hall, the bedroom door clicking shut behind him. The sound felt final. Her knees weakened the moment she was alone. She sank onto the couch, clutching her purse like it might anchor her to this reality. The phone buzzed again. This time, she answered. I said not yet, she whispered, pressing the phone to her ear. A man's voice came through, low, accented, calm in a way that felt earned. We are not rushing you, but you are not safe pretending forever. Her eyes burned. I've survived this long. Yes, he agreed softly, by making yourself small. That has limits. She swallowed. You promised you wouldn't interfere unless I asked. And I will keep that promise, he said. A pause. But others may not. Her breath caught. What do you mean? There are people watching you now, he replied. Because of him. Her heart began to pound. Watching how? Through his name, his business, his ambitions. Another pause, heavier this time. He is reaching into places he does not understand. She closed her eyes. Images flashed. His recent deals, the sudden confidence, the way he'd started coming home later, more guarded. She told herself it was success. That love sometimes grew distant under pressure. You need to be careful, the man continued, and you need to decide who you are going to be when the ground moves. Time equals sign 0.6s. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent, hot. I just wanted a family. I know, he said, and somehow that broke her more than anything else. That is why I owe you everything. The call ended before she could respond. She sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, listening to the muffled sound of water running in the bedroom. Her husband humming softly, carefree. Who are you going to be when the ground moves? She stood abruptly and went to the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water she didn't drink. Her reflection in the dark window startled her, eyes red, face drawn, but something else there too. A spark. A line she hadn't seen before. She opened her purse and pulled out the envelope. Inside were copies, documents stamped and signed, names she hadn't said out loud in years, figures so large they'd once felt imaginary. $20 billion. Her inheritance. She remembered the lawyer's voice that afternoon, polite and stunned. Miss Amani, once you activate the trust, everything changes. There is no partial step. She slid the papers back into the envelope with shaking hands. From the hallway, her husband's voice called, Did you lock the door? Yes, she answered automatically. Liar, she thought. About everything. That night, she lay beside him, staring at the ceiling as he slept. His arm draped possessively across her waist, like a claim. She remembered the man he used to be, The one who'd held her like this when the world was uncertain, whispering plans into her hair. "I'll protect you," he'd said once, "no matter what." Now she wondered who he thought he was protecting her from. Morning came too quickly. She cooked, cleaned, played the part. His parents arrived precisely on time, his mother's gaze sharp and assessing, his father quiet and distant. Dinner was polite, tense, filled with coded remarks and expectations. "You should consider your future," his mother said over dessert, eyes never leaving her face. "A woman like you, security is not guaranteed." Her husband laughed. "She knows her place." The words settled over the table like ash. Something inside her snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, just a clean, silent break. She smiled. "Actually," she said softly, "I've been thinking about that a lot." 4 sets of eyes turned to her. Her husband frowned. "About what?" "About security," she replied, "and what it really means." He opened his mouth to interrupt. Her phone buzzed on the table. Once, twice, 3 times. He stared at it, annoyed. "Turn that off." She didn't. She picked it up instead, reading the message that made her blood run cold and hot all at once. "They've noticed him. Time is shortening." She looked up at her husband, at the family who had measured her worth in silence and submission. And for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. "I think," she said carefully, voice steady, "it's time I stopped borrowing safety from people who don't see me." His mother's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" She stood. "I'm saying," she replied, heart pounding, "that you're all about to learn who I am." Silence swallowed the room. Her husband laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Sit down. Don't start something you can't finish." She met his gaze, really met it, and for a split second she saw it, the flicker of uncertainty. Good, she thought. Let it begin. And somewhere far beyond the walls of that apartment, engines were already turning over, waiting for her next word. He didn't follow her when she walked out of the dining room. That surprised her more than his laughter. She waited for the sound of his chair scraping back, for his voice slicing through the hallway, sharp with authority. Instead, there was only the faint clink of his mother's spoon against porcelain and the low murmur of his father clearing his throat. She retreated to the bedroom and closed the door with care. Not a slam, never a slam. Slams were admissions of guilt in this house. Her hands shook as she leaned against the door, breath shallow. "You just crossed a line," the old voice inside her warned. "You don't come back from this." But another voice, newer, steadier, answered, "Good." She pulled the envelope from her purse again, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened it like she was opening a wound she'd kept clean for years. The numbers stared back at her, obscene and unreal. The signatures, the seals, the finality. $20 billion didn't feel like power. It felt like responsibility pressing down on her chest, heavy as a body. Her phone buzzed. She answered without thinking. "I didn't give the word." "You didn't need to," the man on the other end replied. The situation moved on its own. Her spine straightened. "What does that mean?" "It means your husband is closer to people he shouldn't be," he said calmly, "and they are closer to you than you realize." A chill crawled up her arms. "You said I was protected." "You are," he said, "but protection is not invisibility." She closed her eyes. Images flickered again. His late nights, the way he'd stopped talking about certain deals, the new confidence that felt borrowed. "What kind of people?" There was a pause, not hesitation, respect. "Men who do not forgive debts," he said, "and do not tolerate loose ends." Her mouth went dry. "Am I a loose end?" "No," he said softly. "You are leverage." The words sat between them, ugly and precise. "I never wanted this," she whispered. "Any of it." "I know," he said again. "That is why you survived." The line went dead. She sat there long after, listening to the faint sounds of dinner resuming without her. Laughter, dishes, life reorganizing itself around her absence. When the bedroom door finally opened, she didn't look up. Her husband stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight. What the hell was that? She folded the papers carefully, slid them back into the envelope. I told you, I've been thinking. About embarrassing me? He snapped. About disrespecting my parents? She laughed then, a quiet sound that surprised them both. You think that was disrespect? He stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You don't get to talk to us like equals. Us. There it is, she said softly. You and them. Always you and them. He stepped closer. I gave you everything. No, she corrected. You gave me permission to stay. His eyes darkened, careful. Why? She asked. What happens if I'm not? For a second, she thought he might hit her. The tension coiled tight enough. Instead, he scoffed and turned away. You're tired, he said. You'll apologize tomorrow. She didn't answer. That night, she packed a small bag while he slept. Not to leave, she wasn't ready for that, but to remind herself she could. Clothes, documents, her passport. The envelope went into a hidden pocket she'd sewn months ago, just in case. She didn't remember when she'd started preparing for escape, only that her body had known before her mind did. She lay awake until dawn, listening to his breathing, memorizing it like a sound she might never hear again. In the morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He kissed her cheek on his way out. Don't forget dinner with my partners tonight. She nodded, numb. I won't. The door closed. Silence rushed in. She showered, dressed, moved through the apartment like a ghost. Her phone buzzed again, this time with an address. Come alone. You need to see this. Her heart raced. This is how people disappear, the fearful voice said. This is how people wake up, the other answered. She left the apartment an hour later, taking a taxi instead of the car. The address led her to an old warehouse district by the river, far from the polished glass towers she'd grown used to. Rusted metal, faded signs, men lingering in shadows. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You sure about this place? She swallowed. Yes. She stepped out, heels echoing against cracked concrete. A black sedan waited near the entrance, engine running. The door opened before she reached it. A man stepped out. He was older than she remembered. The years had etched lines into his face, but his eyes were the same, dark, assessing, alive with memory. You came, he said, inclining his head slightly. Not a bow, something more personal. You asked, she replied. He studied her for a long moment. You look smaller. She almost smiled. I learned how. He gestured toward the warehouse. Come. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of oil and rain. Men stood scattered throughout the space, all of them alert, all of them watching her with a respect that made her skin prickle. Not desire, not judgment, awareness. This isn't about intimidation, she said, hugging herself. If that's what you think. It is about truth, he interrupted gently, and timing. They stopped before a table covered in files. Photos, maps. Her stomach dropped as she recognized her husband's face in several of them. What is this? She whispered. His expansion, the man said. The partners he believes are investors. The debts he doesn't know he owes yet. Her hands trembled as she picked up a photo, her husband shaking hands with a man whose face was blurred, background unmistakably foreign. He told me it was clean money. The man looked at her. He lied. The word didn't hurt the way she expected. It felt clarifying. He's in too deep, she said. Yes. And if I do nothing? The man met her gaze. Then you will be used to keep him compliant. Her chest tightened. Used how? By reminding him what he stands to lose, he said carefully. Wives are effective pressure points. She laughed, bitter. He doesn't even like me. He likes what you represent, the man corrected. Stability, respectability, a mask. She set the photo down, hands clenched. So what do you want from me? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. I want you to choose yourself. Her breath hitched. That's it? That is everything, he said. If you activate the trust, the balance shifts. He becomes irrelevant. Dangerous men lose interest. And if I don't, then you remain exposed. She stared at the files, at the life she tried so hard not to see. Love shouldn't require this, she thought. It shouldn't feel like a war. I need time, she said. He nodded. You have less than you think. She turned to leave, heart pounding, head spinning. At the door, she paused. Why are you helping me? He smiled faintly. Because once, when I had nothing, you treated me like I was human. The ride back felt unreal. The city looked different now, less friendly, more honest. Every reflection in every window felt like a question. At home, she dressed for dinner with his partners. A simple black dress, no jewelry. Power didn't need decoration. As she checked her reflection, her phone buzzed again. This time, a message she hadn't expected. From her husband. We need to talk. Before tonight. Her heart skipped. She typed back. About what? The reply came almost instantly. About you. She stared at the screen, pulse roaring in her ears. He knows, the fearful voice whispered. He's afraid, the other corrected. She slipped her phone into her purse and walked toward the door, shoulders back, breath steady. If you're still with us right now, still holding your breath, still feeling that pressure in your chest, don't let go. Like subscribe and stay, because from here on out, nothing in her life stays untouched. She stepped into the hallway, the door closing softly behind her. And somewhere between the woman she had been and the one she was becoming, the world began to tilt. They met at a cafe he used to love back when loving things had still felt safe. Floor-to-ceiling windows, clean lines, soft jazz humming like it was trying to soothe secrets out of people. She arrived first and chose a table near the back, where she could see the door and the reflections in the glass. Old habits resurfaced easily. You're acting like prey, she thought, then corrected herself. No, I'm acting like someone who finally understands the hunt. He walked in 5 minutes late, suit immaculate, expression controlled. He smiled when he saw her, the version of himself he showed the world snapping neatly into place. There you are, he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. She didn't pull away. She didn't lean in either. They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Cups were set down, orders taken. The server smiled at them like they were any other successful couple with a future. He broke first. You've been acting strange. She raised an eyebrow. Only recently? He ignored that. You embarrassed my parents. You embarrassed me. And now you're disappearing in the middle of the day, taking calls you won't explain. Her heart thudded, but her voice stayed calm. I didn't know I needed permission. You need context, he snapped, then softened his tone. There are things happening right now. Big things. I need you steady. Steady for what? She asked. For who? For me, he said, like it was obvious. I'm building something, and I need my wife on my side. The word wife hung between them, heavier than it should have been. She wrapped her hands around her cup, grounding herself in the heat. Is that why you talk to me like I'm disposable? He stiffened. I don't. You do, she said quietly. You just don't call it that. His jaw tightened. You're being sensitive. She smiled faintly. And you're being honest for the first time? Silence stretched. The jazz track changed. A couple laughed somewhere near the window. I'm under pressure, he said finally. You wouldn't understand. She looked at him then, really looked, the man she'd loved. The ambition that had once inspired her now felt sharp, edged with desperation. What have you tied yourself to? She wondered. Try me, she said. He hesitated. That was new. There are investors, he said carefully. They move fast. They don't like uncertainty. And I'm uncertainty, she replied. He sighed, rubbing his temples. You're unpredictable lately. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She didn't check it. She didn't need to. Her attention stayed locked on him. What happens, she asked slowly, if your investors decide they don't like me? His eyes flicked up, sharp. Why would you ask that? Answer the question. He leaned back, studying her. For the first time, she felt like he was really seeing her and not liking what he saw. They'd see you as a liability. There it was, the word again. And what do they do with the liabilities? She pressed. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was flat. They remove them. Her pulse roared in her ears, but she didn't flinch. Is that a threat? She asked. Of course not, he said quickly. I'm just explaining reality. She nodded slowly. Thank you. For what? For finally telling me the truth. She stood before he could respond. Wait, he said, reaching for her wrist. She pulled away gently but firmly. We'll talk tonight, she said, like you asked. She walked out before he could say anything else, her legs trembling only once she hit the street. Outside, the sky was low and gray, the city pressing in. Her phone buzzed again. She answered without stopping. He knows something, she said, or he suspects. The man on the other end didn't sound surprised. Yes. You said I was a leverage. Is that still true? Yes. Her throat tightened. Then I want out. There was a pause, longer this time. Once you step forward, he said, you cannot step back. I know. Say it clearly. She inhaled, exhaled. I choose myself. The words felt strange, heavy. Right. Then come home tonight, he said, and do nothing. We will handle the rest. Her steps slowed. What does handle mean? It means, he replied calmly, that tonight will change everything. The line went dead. She went home and prepared like she was going to war disguised as dinner. She showered, dressed slowly, deliberately. She chose a deep red dress she'd never worn around his family. Too bold, too visible. Tonight she wanted to be seen. When his partners arrived, the apartment filled with unfamiliar energy. Men with sharp eyes and polite smiles, expensive watches. Voices that dropped when she entered the room. Introductions were made, hands shaken. She noted who looked at her too long, who barely acknowledged her existence. Her husband stayed close, a hand at the small of her back, possessive. Behave, he murmured like a joke. She smiled sweetly. Always. Dinner progressed, wine flowed, deals were hinted at. Laughter rose and fell, and then, the knock. Everyone stilled. Her husband frowned. We're not expecting anyone else. Another knock, firmer. I'll get it, she said, already standing. His hands shot out, gripping her wrist. Sit down. She met his gaze. Calm, unafraid. I've got it. She walked to the door, heart pounding but steady. When she opened it, the hallway was full. Men in black suits stood in quiet formation. Behind them, the man she'd spoken to for years, who had once bled in her arms, who had once sworn a debt he never forgot, stepped forward. Her breath caught. He inclined his head. Respect, recognition. Good evening, he said. May we come in? Behind her, chairs scraped. Voices rose in alarm. Her husband appeared at her side, face drained of color. Who the hell are you? The man's gaze flicked to him briefly, dismissively. Not your concern. Her husband laughed, high and brittle. This is a private residence. The man smiled faintly. Not tonight. She stepped forward before anyone else could speak. You're here, she said softly. Yes, he replied. You gave the word. Her husband stared at her. What is he talking about? She turned to face him. And in that moment, she felt the last fragile piece of the woman she'd been far away. Sit down, she said. He blinked. Excuse me? Sit, she repeated. Voice steady, eyes unflinching. Something in her tone, something final, made him obey. The man stepped inside. His presence shifted the air, the balance of power tilting so sharply it was almost audible. The partners exchanged glances, fear blooming behind their eyes. I believe, the man said calmly, we need to discuss some misunderstandings. He looked at her, waiting. She nodded once. Let's talk, she said. And as the door closed behind them, sealing everyone inside, she understood, fully, terrifyingly, that there was no version of tonight where anyone left unchanged. The room didn't explode the way she'd imagined it might. There was no shouting at first, no sudden violence. Just a thick, suffocating stillness, like everyone's lungs had forgotten how to work at the same time. Her husband sat frozen at the head of the table, his fingers still curled around his wineglass. One of the men he'd called a partner reached instinctively for his phone, then thought better of it when one of the suited men by the door shifted his weight. Just slightly. That was all it took. The man she'd invited in, no, the man she'd finally stopped running from, moved through the space with quiet authority, as if the apartment had always belonged to him. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. "Please," he said calmly, "continue sitting. This will not take long." Her husband swallowed. "You can't just come in here and—" "And what?" the man asked mildly, turning his gaze back to him. "Interrupt dinner?" A faint ripple of nervous laughter ran through the partners. It died quickly. The man gestured toward the table. "You have been very busy, expanding, borrowing influence, promising things you do not own." Her husband forced a smile. "I don't know what you think this is, but you're making a mistake." The man tilted his head. "You mistake confidence for immunity." She stood slightly apart from the table now, close enough to be seen, far enough to breathe. Every eye flicked to her at intervals, trying to read her face. Good luck, she thought. I don't even recognize it myself. One of the partners cleared his throat. "If this is about money—" "It is always about money," the man replied. "But tonight, it is also about her." The word landed heavy. Her husband turned to her sharply. "What did you do?" She met his gaze, and for the first time in their marriage, she didn't soften herself for him. "I stopped protecting you from the truth." "What truth?" His voice cracked. "You think you can just bring criminals into my home?" "This isn't your home," she said quietly. "It just looks like it." The man smiled, almost fondly. "She is correct." He nodded to one of his men, who placed a folder on the table. It slid across the polished surface, stopping directly in front of her husband. "Your debts," the man continued. "Your real investors, the ones you never told your wife about." Her husband stared at the folder like it might bite him. "That's fake?" "Open it," the man said. He didn't. His jaw worked, eyes darting to the partners around the table. Some looked confused. Others looked suddenly very afraid. "You see," the man went on, voice conversational, "you believed you were climbing. In truth, you were being lifted because someone wanted access." "Access to what?" her husband snapped. The man's gaze slid to her. "To her," he said simply. Her stomach clenched, but she didn't move. One of the partners pushed back his chair. "This is insane. I'm leaving." He made it 2 steps before a suited man blocked his path. No hands were raised, no threats spoken. The message was clear anyway. "Sit," the man said calmly. The partner sat. Her husband finally snapped the folder open. Papers rustled, color drained from his face with every page. This isn't possible," he whispered. "I didn't sign these." "No," the man agreed. "You authorized them." Her husband's head jerked up. "I would remember." The man's expression didn't change. "Not when ambition is louder than caution." Silence again. Thick, crushing. Her husband's voice dropped. "Why are you doing this?" The man looked at her. She stepped forward then, heels clicking softly against the floor. Her heart pounded, but her voice didn't shake. "Because you lied," she said. "Because you put me in danger without even telling me. Because you decided my life was collateral." He stared at her like she was a stranger. "I was protecting you." She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "By treating me like something expendable?" One of the partners muttered, "Jesus." Her husband stood abruptly. "This is my wife. You don't get to speak for her." She moved closer, standing directly across from him. "You don't get to speak for me anymore." His eyes searched her face, panic finally cracking through the arrogance. "What did you tell him?" She held his gaze. "Enough." The man cleared his throat gently. "There is one more thing." He nodded again, and another folder appeared, thicker. He placed it in front of her this time. Her breath caught. "Your inheritance," the man said, "fully activated." The room erupted. "What?" No way. That's not. Her husband staggered back a step. Inheritance? What inheritance? She didn't answer him. Her eyes skimmed the documents, the numbers stark and undeniable. The trust, the assets, the confirmation. $20 billion. She closed the folder slowly, the sound echoing louder than it should have. Her husband laughed, high, unhinged. This is a joke. She doesn't have that kind of money. The man looked at him with something like pity. You married her without ever asking who she was. Her husband turned to her, eyes wild. Say something. She inhaled. The air felt different now, cleaner, sharper. I wanted you to love me when I had nothing, she said softly. I wanted to believe I could choose you freely. His voice dropped to a whisper. And now? And now, she replied, I'm choosing myself. He shook his head. You're lying. You had to be lying all this time. She smiled sadly. No, I was waiting. For what? He demanded. For you to show me who you really were. The man stepped back, giving her space, giving her the moment. Your business, he said to her husband, will be dissolved by morning. Your debts will be collected, gently if you cooperate. And if I don't? Her husband asked, desperation bleeding through. The man's gaze flicked to her. That depends on her. Every head turned toward her again. Her heart hammered. Power pressed against her ribs, heavy and terrifying. She thought of the nights she'd cried quietly into pillows. The way he'd spoken about her, like she wasn't in the room. The way he'd let his family diminish her, again and again. She could destroy him completely. She could also walk away. She closed her eyes, briefly, feeling the woman she'd been, and the woman she was becoming collide inside her chest. I don't want him hurt, she said finally. Her husband sagged in relief. I want him irrelevant, she finished. The man nodded. As you wish. Her husband collapsed back into his chair, face buried in his hands. The partners scrambled then. Apologies, explanations, excuses spilling out in panic. The man waved them off. You will all receive instructions, he said. Follow them and you will be allowed to continue breathing easily. They nodded furiously. One by one, the suited men guided them toward the door. The apartment emptied until only 3 people remained. Her husband, and the man who had changed the trajectory of her life the moment he'd walked back into it. Her husband looked up at her, eyes red. I loved you, he whispered. She studied him, really studied him. The fear, the regret, the boy who'd once held her hand and promised the world. I know, she said. You just loved yourself more. She turned away before he could say anything else. The man waited by the door. Are you ready to leave? She glanced once more at the apartment, the life she'd built by shrinking herself to fit. Yes. As they stepped into the hallway, she felt it then. Not triumph, not revenge. Freedom and fear. Because tomorrow the world would know her name. And nothing would ever be small again. She didn't cry when the elevator doors closed behind them. She thought she might. Her body had spent years rehearsing for that moment. Tears as punctuation, grief as proof that something mattered. But the tears never came. Just a strange quiet, like a storm that had finally moved out to sea. The man stood beside her, hands folded in front of him, gaze forward, respectful, patient. He had always been that way with her. Never rushed her pain, never demanded gratitude. The elevator descended. Each floor felt like a layer of skin peeling away. When the doors opened, the underground garage was empty, except for the black cars waiting in a neat line, engines humming low. The sound felt alive now, not threatening, like a heartbeat that matched her own. She stopped walking. I need a moment, she said. The man nodded immediately. Take it. She turned back toward the elevator doors, half expecting them to open again, half expecting him to come running out. Angry, broken, begging. Part of her still believed that love could survive humiliation if you held it gently enough. The doors stayed closed. That was the answer. She exhaled slowly. He never asked, she said, more to herself than anyone else. The man tilted his head. Asked what? Who I was, she replied. Not really. He asked what I could do for him, what I could endure. But never who I was when no one was watching. She pressed a hand to her chest. Her heart still beat hard, but it was her rhythm now. When someone doesn't ask, the man said quietly, it is because they are afraid of the answer. She laughed softly. I think he was afraid I might matter. They walked to the car together. A door opened before she reached it. Inside, the leather seats were cool, the space wide enough to stretch without apology. She sat, spine straight, hands resting openly on her lap. No clutching, no hiding. As the car pulled away, souls slid past the windows. Streets she'd memorized from the passenger seat, always moving through, but never claiming. Tonight, the city looked different, less like something she had to earn. Where to? The driver asked. She hesitated. Home didn't feel like a place anymore. It felt like a role she'd retired from. The river, she said finally. I want to see the water. The car adjusted course. Silence settled again, comfortable this time. You could have destroyed him, the man said after a while. Completely. She nodded. I know. Why didn't you? She watched the city lights smear across the glass. Because I don't want my power to sound like his. The car slowed near the riverbank. Night air rolled in when the door opened, cool and damp, carrying the smell of water and movement. She stepped out, heels sinking slightly into gravel, and walked toward the railing. The river was dark.